The next two videos of the launch and landing series will be about Denmark. Denmark is a great place in Scandinavia if it comes to coastal soaring. There are dunes of all sizes facing in all directions for different wind situations. Great ground handling spots at the dunes and at the beaches. Small edges for speed flyers and parakites in stronger wind situations. Relaxed soaring along larger dunes, and in summertime until late in the night also magnificent sunsets. Some local guides know more than 150 paragliding spots all across the country. I was lucky enough to be able to visit 10 of them during my 2 weeks stay. The first video will be about the west coast, starting in the far north in Hanstholm, a place called Hamborg, a huge dune, down until Henne Beach in the south, and also covering a couple of places in between, such as Hvide Sande, Boven Bel and Husby Klit. Now let's start with the first destination, a great dune in Hamburg near Hanstholm. Here we are already, down with the car the last meters to the parking lot at the beach. In the air, the first gliders are already visible. From the car park you can see the western foothills of the dune. The wind at this moment was about 6 meters a second, so no problem for taking off at the top of the ridge. But if the wind is too strong, theoretically the dune can also be handled up to take off somewhere in between. If we look at the area, we find a takeoff at the western part of the dune. To the east there's a second takeoff in front of the campsite. This is a little bit lower and not as steep, so it can be used in stronger winds. The distance between the two takeoffs is about 1 kilometer. The entire soaring ridge is about 1.4 kilometers and the dune height is 35 meters. This is now the takeoff at the western side of the dune. In a perfect wind situation, the wind would come from the north-northeast. The ridge here is sloping down quite steep and the edge drops off abruptly. This might make the situation easier in the air, but getting out is quite difficult and a lot of pilots had problems. Even at the front of the edge, actually the takeoff is in a lee.
So every now and then it goes maybe.
No, at the front, we have, this is a little bit a rotor here. That's the problem. Wait. I decided to take my moustache as the wind picked up to 7 or 8 meters a second. But I also needed help from a different pilot. And out we go. Here we can see the whole dune from east to west. I was in the air with about 30 or 40 other pilots. This was no problem as the wind was strong enough to keep away from the ridge quite a bit, but sometimes this place can be very crowded and then caution has to be taken. Passing the eastern takeoff in front of the campsite in slow motion. And a view to the west takeoff where I just started. I think Hanstholm is really a great area for coastal soaring and I can only recommend it. The next stop will be the most southern point of this video, called Henne Beach. Henne is a seaside resort with many holiday homes, on the west coast of Denmark. Parking is directly at the beach, where also showers and toilets can be found. Besides the parking for the cars, there's also a small place for camper vans. Directly at the beach there is a restaurant and a bar, and in front of it there's a very wide beach which the pilots can use for landing. To the left and to the right of the restaurant, the dunes reach their highest point of about 20 meters in altitude. Here are the best takeoff points for paragliders. Optimal conditions can be found at this site if there are stable winds from the west at a speed of about 6 to 8 meters a second. Overall, the Henne area includes the coastal section from Veerso in the south to Bovbjerg in the north, a total coastline of about 20 kilometers. Heading down the 10-kilometer strip from Henne towards Veerso, the coastline is orientating more and more to the north-northwest. Heading up north towards Bovbjerg, the orientation of the coastline is changing from west-northwest to west-southwest. So along this 20-kilometer long strip, there are different options for the pilots depending on the wind situation. The average height of the dunes should be about 10 meters. Now let's head to the north to have a quick look at Bovbjerg. There is a parking option directly in front of the dune access. And there is a warning sign. Henne and its surroundings are part of the restricted area number 35. If the area is activated, paragliding is strictly forbidden, and compliance with the rule is checked by the military. Additionally, at Bovbjerg, a red balloon is warning about military activities. Balloon down, area is clear. Balloon up, there is military activity. The local club asks visiting pilots to inform themselves about the activation of the area on the Navi Air map, where all activated restricted areas in Denmark are shown. Besides facing west-southwest instead of west, Bovbjerg is a quite remote area, so it can be a good alternative if there are too much pilots around in Henne. Shape of the terrain is more or less the same, albeit the dunes seem to be a little bit less steep but slightly higher. The next stop along the coast is Hvide Sande. The dunes of Hvide Sande are just about 20 minutes north of Henne. Access is at a Hvide Sande campsite in front of the Ringkøbing Fjord, just about 1 kilometer south of town. The perfect wind here would be from the southwest or from the west-southwest. The dunes are a little bit higher than in Henne with an altitude of about 20 meters, so the area can be used in lower wind conditions. It is difficult to estimate the length of the flyable dunes. My best guess is about 10 kilometers all the way down to Bovbjerg. About an hour north of Hvide Sande by car, we find Fering and Boven Bel. The interesting thing about this paragliding area is that there are 3 takeoffs, one in Ferring, one at the Bovbjerg lighthouse, and finally a 3rd one down to the south at the Transkirke church. The first station is Ferring takeoff, and in the background we can already see Bovbjerg lighthouse. The west wind blew in with about 5 meters a second, not really enough to get in the air from this takeoff, which has an altitude of approximately 20 meters. This pilot gave it a try and was able to stay in the air for some time. Later on, the wind picked up to about 6 meters a second, and this was enough at this ridge for some pilots to stay in the air until the thunderstorm arrived. I think in good conditions the dunes here are perfect for soaring, and the town is just around and parking possible close by. Here a view at the takeoff from the front. It's not very steep and easy to handle. And another view from the top. The distance towards the lighthouse, which is the second takeoff in this paragliding area, is about 1 kilometer. The dunes become increasingly higher, so soaring to the lighthouse should not be a problem. Here we can see the takeoff and Ferring town to the right. The altitude of the dunes at the lighthouse is about 40 meters. Takeoff might be possible in weaker wind situations compared to Ferring. But definitely the takeoff is not as easy, as the ridge is very steep and the glider has to be pulled up from a lee. Here a view at the takeoff site and at the dunes around of it. Finally, we are arriving at the most southern takeoff of the 3 takeoff points, the church. Takeoff is a little bit flatter than at the lighthouse, and the dunes are a bit smaller, maybe an altitude of about 30 meters. Launching here should be a little bit easier than at the lighthouse, as the dunes are not as steep, which makes it easier for the glider to inflate. Launching from the church is possible in both directions, to the north and to the south, but the distance flyable to the south is limited. This pilot came all the way from the lighthouse, which is a distance of about 2 kilometers. The flight was possible with an intermediate glider at a wind speed of about 5 meters a second. To summarize it, Fering and Boven Bel was my favorite paragliding area to the west during this trip. The final chapter of this video will be Biglit, a paragliding area located right in between Fering and Hvide Sande. Biglit is reminiscent of Henne. The dunes are also about 10 to 15 meters high, and the area is facing west. Same as in Henne, the ridge is several kilometers long and can be flown in wind speeds starting at 5 to 6 meters a second. Unfortunately, when I visited, the wind was from the east, so I was not able to try the area. But if you look at this ridge, then you can imagine how cool it would be soaring along the dunes here. Thanks for visiting Denmark Part 1. I hope you enjoyed the video.